What up, what up? Welcome to my channel where we're doing music covers, original music, album reviews, song reviews, reactions, tier lists, whatever the day calls for. If you like what you see here, please subscribe to the channel. If you have content on here, I will subscribe to you as well. I am all about supporting up-and-comers on here. My original music can be found at robcary.bandcamp.com. I have one album to my name right now. It's called Communication. It's quite a few years old now, but I am in the studio recording and creating the follow-up to that album. It is called Ugly Living, and the newest single to promote that album is out now. It's on the channel. It came out on September 20th. It's called Save My Life Again, and it's a lyric video, and it contains the album cover as well as the back album art and the track listing. And the wheels have not stopped turning there either. We are done with the drum tracks for the next single that's coming out, the album opener, Premeditated. And I finished tying up the loose ends of the third single, which will be track 8 on the album, Faint Heart. I'm just so excited for what's coming. When this album drops, this is my promise. You may love it, you may hate it, you may be lukewarm on it, but my promise is no two tracks are going to sound the same. And even if you hate something that I'm doing on a song, you will never feel as if it is phoned in or lazy. Like, this is a big night on the channel. Anybody that's been watching my content for a while knows that my favorite band since 1997 is 311. And Transistor was the beginning of my musical journey. It is my favorite album, not only by them, but it is my favorite album to be created ever. I want to give a shout out to all the 311 fans that have visited this channel on my reaction to the last single they put out, Need Somebody, or the tier list of all the 311 albums. Like, I love interacting with fans of this band and hearing what they have as their list of like the best and worst 311 albums. Like, I just love interacting with fans of this band. I'm so grateful that they're still around. All 5 original members are still here. When I knew that this new album was coming, my view on it was anything from their first album, Music, up until Evolver, that 6 album streak that they have of just amazing material, I wasn't going to compare it to that. I wasn't even going to think about that. I'm just grateful that they're still here. I think Mosaic and Voyager have been some of the best post-Evolver albums, be it hit or miss, that they've created. Like, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this album, I figured let's have some fun with this here. Let's share some merch. Like, any super valued 311 merch that you have, like, share it in the comments. We're going to get into some of the merch that I have that means a lot to me. Transistor is my musical awakening. It was my introduction to this band. Before me even knowing who the band was, I saw the cover of this album in, does anybody remember this? Eagle Video. Giant Eagle used to have like a video rental place, and it literally had my soundtrack to 1997 all in a row. Prodigy's The Fat of the Land, Incubus, Science, and then Transistor from 311. All 3 of those, I just like, without me ever having heard the band, like, I was kind of sheltered a little bit growing up from a lot of things, and those were the 3. 1997, like, alternative music had so much to offer at that time, but those are the 3 albums I'd still say to this day are like my musical awakening. It all started in 1997 with 311's Transistor, The Prodigy's Fat of the Land, and Incubus's Science. Those 3, and Deftones Around the Fur too. Those 4 albums, like, they're masterpieces. Even though I would say Transistor is like their crowning achievement, if somebody who had never heard the band before, or maybe had heard them but didn't know why they should love them this much, wanted something to really like see what they're capable of and how great they are, I wouldn't point them to Transistor first. I would point them to this DVD here, their live DVD from 2004. It's such a perfect era too, because Evolver is such a good 311 album. I want to talk about that a little bit. when getting through like all the merch, like I am a huge fan of Evolver, and this is like seriously, even if this wasn't my favorite band, which they are, this would be the best live DVD I've ever seen. Like it's just so good, and there's actually stuff I've heard that was cut from this, like because there was so much footage. Their major label debut album music, it means a lot to me too. Every song on that means so much to me. I have the original Capricorn Records pressing of it. And this super comfortable 311 Music hoodie, which I've worn on several of my videos. I love this thing so much. When it comes to Transistor, I've got it on CD. I've also got it on vinyl. When COVID was going on, I was a Transistor. This is another really good purchase here. The 311 Archive box set. You get all the B-sides from like all the albums and stuff, but my favorite part of this box set is hearing just like the foundation of a lot of their classic songs just on like a keyboard and with Nick just doing like the vocals and stuff. And that's on CD3. CD3 makes this whole thing worth it. And there's a really cool book in here too. Here's another one. The Unity Orchestra 2014. This was right after Stereolithic. This one is very Evolver heavy, you know, because a lot of their best softer songs are on Evolver. And they close it out with Eons from Sound System. And one thing I love about this version of it is on Sound System, on the studio cut for Eons, they didn't have SA come in and harmonize with him. And I think that they realized that he really should have. And it's on this version. And this version, like I like the original version too. I listen to it all the time. But this version of Eons makes the purchase of this album worth it. And I don't know if you can get this anymore. I don't know what this is worth, but you're not getting enough of me because I ain't giving this shit up. Like I said, I saw 311 live a couple months ago at the Unity Tour. I'm from Pittsburgh area, but I went out to Cleveland to see them. And there's my Unity Tour shirt. I'm a really big fan of baseball tees. I got this baseball tee shirt of 311 and Transistor. Yeah, just share what you got, what kind of cool 311 merch that you have in the comments. Or shit, there's one other thing I wanted to show off. Just a second. I know a lot of old school 311 fans don't like the track Good Feeling off of their last album, Voyager. I think it served the purpose that it was meant to serve, and you got to see it live. Like, I saw it live. I was at the 2019 Pittsburgh live stream show, and they played that song, and I was on edibles, and I was high as fuck, and it just felt great. And while they were playing Good Feeling, they tossed out these fucking glow sticks, and I have them on a showcase in my cabinet, and they still work. Both of them. They still work, and well, this one might not work. When you consider how many other bands from the 90s that are in their age, you know, have either had several lineup changes, aren't doing that well. Like, look at like Jane's Addiction and shit. Like, I'm so grateful that they're still here. And when this new album, Full Bloom, came out, I'll tell you what I was expecting. I was expecting a B tier album. Stereolithic, Mosaic, and Voyager. All three of those I consider to be B tier albums. Good stepping stones back to greatness that I think began with Universal Pulse. This is my favorite band, and it would be easy to be very biased in their favor when analyzing their newest album, but does singing the praises of my favorite band override my desire to be a very honest and authentic commentator? No, it does not. This album's got its flaws, for sure. And I'm going to say it straight up. Full Bloom from 311, it should have been an EP. It should have been a 6-song EP. There are 4 songs on this album that I think are amazing. Some of the best things they've ever done in their entire career, at least since Universal Pulse, and that I'm always constantly practicing singing to. And I know that it took a ton of time to make. The lyrics and the vocal delivery, everything in those songs are great. I think there's a song on here that had potential to be great, but has some lazy moments. And then that leaves you with 5 tracks that I think are kind of or just like some of the worst things they've ever done. And on a 10-track album, you know, 5 tracks that are kind of really drag it down. Frontman Nick of 311 said that this album was going to be 311 on steroids. And anytime I talk about this album with the 311 fan that I know, I always joke that like Nick took all the steroids. Let me say the title track, Full Bloom. If we're talking about the song Full Bloom being 311 on steroids, I fully agree. That song is just incredible, and like the off time signature like thing in the verses and even in the hook, like the vocal harmonies. Full Bloom the track, yeah, absolutely. But this album as a whole, him making that statement pissed a lot of 311 fans off, and I can see why. These last 2 albums that they came out with, Mosaic and Voyager, with them collaborating with their longtime producer Scott Ralston for most of the songs, and then collaborating with John Feldman for like 4 or 5 of the songs on the album. In my opinion, I think it's hit and miss, and I think some of the Feldman tracks are pretty good, man. Like what this album showed me is I don't think it matters who produces them. I don't think it matters who writes them. It matters how invested the person writing the song is into the song. We're going to get into that when it comes to like the writing credits and stuff on this album, but I thought like Too Much to Think was a really good collaboration. Really good bass lines from Peanut and stuff. I vocal covered Lucid Dreams. That's a Feldman track. I like that one a lot, you know. Like I said, Good Feeling. I like it too. No, of course I wouldn't want an entire album of it, but they never gave us an entire album of it, you know. But when you look at the writing credits on this new album, you know, you hear a lot of 311 fans complaining that either Nick is doing too much, and it's easy to think that he's like kind of like being controlling in the writing process. And you also would think when you look at the writing credits for this new album that too many outside writers are the problem. And this album is showing me that's not the case at all. The song either is good or it sucks. And you know what? Some of the songs that have Peanut and Tim and Chad in the writing credits are some of the worst ones on here. Like, let's get into this thing, okay? I'm going to do this by starting with the worst things on this album. Friend, which is what I think is the album's worst song. And it sounds like Stereolithic was an album where there were some really, really good songs, but the tracks that were terrible were really fucking terrible. And worse than anything on Universal Pulse. Like I like Universal Pulse as a whole a bit more than Stereolithic. And Friend sounds like one of the worst things on Stereolithic. And another thing that's frustrating about this album is that almost all the songs have some part in it that's like really enjoyable and really good. Even like the worst ones, you know? And then the other song I found to be completely awful on this album is number 5, Mountaintop. And it just kind of shows that we really shouldn't be blaming John Feldman for anything that is terrible in the modern day of 311, like in these select songs. Like Feldman isn't even part of this album. And this track reminds me of some of the worst things that, like, not even just Imagine Dragons, but what's that knockoff band of theirs? It's American like authors or something. It sounds like the Lion King. Like, it's not a 311 song, and it's no surprise that most of the band were not present for the writing of that one. It shouldn't have been on this album at all. There's 2 tracks on this album that are just like really forgettable. Days Go By and Persimmon. They have some cool parts here and there, but we're really reverting back to the sound of Uplifter here. And I thought that was like their worst album. I was not expecting this album to have so much of the Uplifter sound on it, you know? especially with how upbeat and aggressive the singles were. And that's the most negative I'm going to be about this album, because there's also some fire here and some really good stuff. Let's talk about that stuff now. There's a song on this album called New Heights, and the hook of that song and the vocal harmonizations are just incredible. It still kind of has a little bit of that uplifter flavor to it, but it's as if it was one of the better songs on that album. And there's some lazy choices in the verses and like the la-di-da stuff. Like, I think this whole album should have been sat on a bit longer, for sure. You know, this song here really shows that. New Heights. Like, let's get into the best parts of this album. The opener, You're Gonna Get It. It has some of the best vocal interplay and vocal delivery that these guys have had in a while. Even though, like, the vocal delivery on Voyager was really good too. There's some Mosaic vibes on this track, but as a whole, I don't think it sounds like any of their other stuff. And I really liked it. I dual vocal covered it on the channel. I just really like this song. I practice to it all the time. And that's like one of the things that I appreciate about this album more than anything else, even the songs that are kind of is it's really good to practice singing to and harmonizing to. And then the second track, Need Somebody, is very reminiscent of the best moments of Stereolithic. Like, Stereolithic is such a hit in this album, The songs that are on Stereolithic that are bad are really bad. Like Showdown, The Call, like, I don't think there's anything on Voyager that's like that bad. I thought Voyager was a really good compact package of what they do now with Scotch, and like when they have outside writers, like between like Stereolithic, Mosaic, and Voyager, I think Voyager's like the best start to finish listen. I was expecting that here with this. We didn't get that here, we really didn't. But the stuff that is fire is just fire on this thing. Full Bloom. Full Bloom is an incredible track. And it might be better than like really anything on Mosaic or Stereolithic or Universal Pulse. Full Bloom, like, it's the title track for a reason. Like, it's really, really good. Every second of it, man. It's just everything that you've come to love about the band these days, with like this odd time signature and like the effects that Tim uses on his PRS, the vocal harmonizations, the masterful songwriting. Yes, it's in a pop song structure, but with this odd time signature, like, Full Bloom might be the best track on the whole thing, in my view. And then the other really, really good song, in my opinion, is the ninth track, All You've Seen. And it also kind of sounds like it would have fit on Uplifter. But it was everything I wanted, and I knew going into it that it was going to be a more reggae-heavy song. And if you watch my reaction to Need Somebody, when they dropped that, I said, like, if there's one thing I'm really hoping for this album, it's one or two dub reggae songs in the vein of like some of the stuff we got on Transistor, like Running, Interlight Spectrum, Stealing Happy Hours. Is this anything like that? No. It's pop reggae, but it's still like what I thought I was going to get, and I liked it a lot. All You've Seen is a really good one. So You're going to Get It, Need Somebody, Full Bloom, and All You've Seen make this album worth the price of getting it. New Heights has a lot of potential. I wish they had sat on it a little bit longer. And the other 5 tracks on this album, I'm probably not going to go back to them too much. When I made the video of the tier list for all their albums, there was nothing in the C tier, as you can see here. And if this album had existed when I made this list, this one probably would have been put in the C tier. Even though there are songs on it that I like more than most of the stuff on like Mosaic and Voyager, this album is really frustrating. It should have been an EP. That's what I'm going to say. It should have been a 6-song EP with You're Gonna Get It, Need Somebody, Full Bloom, All You've Seen, and New Heights. And if they were going to do a song like Braver, like the closer, like we know what Peanut's capable of. Like the bass line should have been much more creative, and the vocal delivery and the raps themselves from SA. It's like, yeah, we want a track where SA's like leading the song with like rapping and stuff, but if it's not gonna be like what it was on like Music and Grassroots and the Blue Album and Transistor, like it's just such a lazy delivery of it. That's another song that I think should have been set on longer. I would have been perfectly fine waiting until 2025 for this album. So yeah, my stance on this is that it's a C tier album with some A plus songs on it. And I think that people that are saying that this is the worst album they've ever made is being a little bit unfair and not looking at the nuances of how great the best songs on this album are. But I think that people that are dismissing the fact that this album has some serious flaws are also being a little bit disingenuous. I think this is a C tier album that should have been an EP. Full Bloom is rad though. The song Full Bloom, I love it so much. I've listened like the songs that on this album that are amazing. I've listened to them so many times. Especially You're Gonna Get It and Full Bloom. Those are amazing songs. Like All You've Seen also is like really good. Like it does sound a little bit like a Uplifter B-side. And that's another thing that's frustrating about Uplifter is like they have B-sides that are on this archive box set that are better than the songs that they made as A-sides for Uplifter. Like Uplifter, it probably should have been an EP too. Everything I'm saying is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear your opinions. That's all I got to say about this one. And until next time, thanks for watching.